One of the things that has been historically broken is, first of all, we really haven't focused on women, right? We've considered women as small men. We haven't studied women in our own right.
And to continue this narrative of there's no difference between men and women is insulting and, quite frankly, outdated.
And sexist. A common one that you've all heard of is fallopian tubes. That was actually named after an old Italian priest many, many years ago whose last name was Fallopia. And that's why we call them the fallopian tubes, ladies.
So talk to us a little bit about, we were talking about like women are not small men. So talk to us about how women are not cows.
Yes, most women do not know that the clitoris is a structure that is way more than what we can see or feel. And if you look at a picture of it next to a penis, the similarities are striking.
Women will accept like a staggering amount of suffering. Hello, my friends. Welcome to another episode of Better with Dr. Stephanie. 'Tis me, your host, as always, Dr. Stephanie Estima. And today, you are going to experience something very special in this podcast. And I know that I say that a lot, but here is the deal. If you are new to the show, hi, welcome. This is going to be pretty much the perfect episode for you because this is going to be an introduction to a lot of the main talking points of the podcast. We are going to be talking about menopause and perimenopause, cardiovascular disease, autoimmunity, Alzheimer's risk and disease, why it's different for women than it is for men. We're going to be talking about sex. All of the things that matter to women are included in this conversation. Now, if you are a dark roast Betty, you have been here from the beginning since 2019. This is going to be and by the way, I love you for that. This is going to be a really nice summary episode. You'd be like, yeah. We talked with, I remember this conversation. We talked about this with this person. So this is going to be like a trip down memory lane for you. So this is going to be great for whether you are someone who's been with the podcast from the beginning, or you are a recent Betty. Both of you, I love you to death. So my guest today, Meghan Rabbitt. She is an award-winning journalist specializing in women's health and wellness. Her work has appeared in Women's Health, Oprah Daily, Prevention, and Maria Shriver's Sunday paper, and many other national publications. She is known for translating complex medical and scientific topics into clear, actionable information. Meghan is the author of the 700-page The New Rules of Women's Health, a comprehensive guide helping women navigate their health through perimenopause, menopause, and beyond, which was commissioned originally by Maria Shriver. You are going to learn so much in this episode. I cannot wait for you to dive in. So without further delay, please enjoy my conversation with Meghan Rabbitt. All right, Meghan Rabbitt, welcome to the show. I'm thrilled to have you here today.
I'm so excited to be here. Thanks so much.
Me too. I am thrilled that you are here because your book, The New Rules for Women's Health, I think is going to be something that is going to challenge the status quo, which I think was one of the original intentions of the book. But let's actually dive right in. I'll ask you kind of a big question, and then we can start to narrow it down. What is broken in women's health today?
I think one of the things that has been historically broken is, first of all, we really haven't focused on women. Right? We've considered women as small men. We haven't studied women in our own right. And I think when we did even start talking about women's health, we focused on what we now call bikini medicine, right? We looked at our gynecologic health. We looked at our breast health, our sexual health. These are all important aspects of our overall health. But we didn't really tuck in to really learn the differences in the female brain from the male brain, in the female heart from the male heart. And so thankfully, we are starting to make tracks on that front, though many of the experts, I'd say all of the experts I interviewed for my book, say we have a long way to go.
And there's a lot of people online, I got to tell you, that are adamant that there is no difference, that there's no difference between men and women, that this is all just like predatory marketing. I actually saw this yesterday. Someone who just has it in for Stacey Sims for whatever reason. I'm not sure what the ammo is, but it's like, we're exactly the same. I'm infuriated by that message because yes, there are some mechanistic ways that we function the same. The heart beats, we depolarize neurons the same, there's no difference. But certainly like Lisa Mosconi's work, which I think you're referring to with the Bikini Medicine and the brain, the changes in the brain as a woman goes through menopause, is very distinct. And there are distinct, even just, I just did a talk on this a couple weekends ago on the different, even just the biomechanics, right? Just like our Q angle, like we have different, our hips are wider, we have a different pelvic basin, we have different carry angles. Like there's different ways that we move through the world, both mechanistically and physically. And to continue this narrative of there's no difference between men and women is insulting and quite frankly outdated.
And sexist.
Yes.
It is not progressive. We know more now. We just do. Yes, you're naming all the things that we finally are starting to know. Yes, there are some things that aren't that are the same, but there are so many differences that we once I think thought were little nuances that we're now learning are like, oh, wait a second, maybe the differences in estrogen receptors in the brain is actually an explanation as to why women disproportionately suffer from Alzheimer's by 2/3. That is not small. Women are more likely to have knee problems and need knee replacements. And when we're athletic, we injure our knees more because of that Q angle you just referenced. And so I think it's not only misguided and sexist, but just frankly wrong and not factual based on what we finally do know about the differences in women's health versus men's health.
So let's talk about language. In addition to being a lover of languages, many languages, I also think that it's very important to use proper terminology. And in the book, you talk about this idea that, and I'll let you expand on it, that a lot of the body parts that we commonly refer to are named after men. We would never, and this is like my love for Kelly Casperson coming out here, like we would never call the vas deferens in a male like the Casperson tubes. Or like the Casperson, whatever.
Totally.
So shout out to Kelly there. But tell us about the power of language as it relates to anatomy.
Yeah, well, I think as Kelly Casperson, I'm also a fangirl, and if there is one cool group of medical doctors, it is urologists who are female, because man, they are doing so much for us because they see the differences again between men and women. But anyway. Words matter, as Dr. Casperson says, right? And, I have been a health journalist for going on 25 years now. And when I interviewed a group of mostly female anatomists for my book, I had no idea that there is this group of anatomists who are on a mission to have us collectively using what's called eponyms. So an eponym is an anatomical term named after the usually male, older white male, or as one anatomist said, the pale male and stale. Basically, people who laid claim to these body parts years ago. A common one that we've all heard of is fallopian tubes. That was actually named after an old Italian priest many, many years ago whose last name was Fallopia. And that's why we call them the fallopian tubes, ladies. And so what this group of anatomists is trying to do is say, wait a second, let's not use the eponyms. Let's use anatomical toponyms, which is the term based on where it is in the body. So instead of using fallopian tubes, you'd say uterine tubes. And uterine tubes is very specific. You know exactly where they are because they come from the uterus. And the cool thing about it is not only are we working towards a progressive, more, less sexist way of talking about our bodies and our health, but also for medical school students and anyone in the helping professions who has to learn anatomy for their job, it actually decreases cognitive load. So we're actually helping the next generation of people who are helping us by using these terms. So yeah, pretty powerful.
When you were saying fallopian tube, like, oh, there's another one, Kegels, right? We talk about Kegels named after the gynecologist. And I had Sarah Reardon on the show, and we decided that we were going to call them puss-ups instead.
That's fantastic. I love that so much. Yeah.
So you can use that, take that. But Kegels is another example, right? It's like, this is an exercise men and women can do Kegels, right? So it's for the pelvic floor. But again, it's named after like Piaget's disease. Like there's so many, like, you can just go on and on and on and on and think about all the scientists who had the I'm going to say it like hubris
Yeah.
to say, I'm going to name this disease or this body part after myself, you know, or this process, this exercise, whatever, after myself.
And what one of the anatomists told me is actually sometimes they didn't even discover, quote unquote, the body part. They just laid claim to it and they wanted their name in an anatomy book.
Right.
And so this is really, you know, a history that we have to do right now and change course. You know, when it comes to words and words matter, I think another important one that I sense we're going to start using more, and a lot of the menopause specialists I talk to say, you know, hormone replacement therapy, it's fine, but actually it's not super accurate because in menopause we're not actually trying to replace hormones to what they once were. We're just giving ourselves a little supplement. And so really the better term is menopause hormone therapy, or even simply hormone therapy if you're talking in relation to menopause. And I think that's another small way, you know, small change that I've been making in how I talk about it when I talk to my friends about menopause hormone therapy. And then it starts a conversation, you know, because I think there's still a lot of women who are a little afraid to use hormone therapy. And I think when they hear the reasoning behind why we're not trying to replace it, actually you may be likely getting a lot less estrogen in hormone therapy than you did if you ever took the pill. It opens our eyes to say, oh, okay, wait a second. This is something I should stay open to.
I really like that too, because I think whenever you use the term hormone replacement therapy or HRT, most women, at least of our age, who would be thinking about it, are going to come back to the Women's Health Initiative. Like there's a lot of residue, we'll say, with HRT and breast cancer risk and cardiovascular risk and all of the, you know, we'll say the statistical failures of the, the way that the mathematical and logical fallacies from the WHI as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think the more, thankfully, we're talking about it more. I think thanks in large part to a lot of, you know, correct messaging now. We're starting to stay more open to it. But again, words matter. The language we use matters. The language we use not only about things not related to us, but about our bodies and our health, right? It leads us to feel, when we have the knowledge of our bodies and the language we need to describe what we're feeling, what we're going through, that it feels empowering.
Yeah. And the other piece I would love for you to talk about, because I was chuckling because I actually thought this myself for years, was the cow clitoris. So talk to us a little bit about, you know, we were talking about like women are not small men. So talk to us about how women are not cows.
Yes. So this one blew my mind. I was interviewing an amazing urologist, Dr. Maria Yuloko, and she realized that the data we were using to understand nerve endings in the clitoris was based on research in cows. And because we are not cows, she decided, you know what, and this was just a few years ago. So this is not like this happened back in the 90s or, you know, we're talking single digit years. She said, okay, we need to study the female clitoris, a human clitoris, and found out there were twice the nerve endings we thought. And now it's such an important organ, as we all know, ladies. And the fact that it has been, you know, since just far too late in the game that we knew how many nerve endings were there is just sad.
Yeah. And it's a really important. So the other thing I want to touch on as it relates to the clitoris is the anatomical homologue. So I think a lot of people think that the clitoris is just this like little button that's out that, you know, just sits, you know, in the vulvar area. So talk to us about how this is actually more of a homologue to the penis than maybe just this little like pleasure button.
Yeah, totally. I think, you know, most women do not know that the clitoris is a structure that is way more than what we can see or feel. It actually goes into the internal part of your body. And if you look at a picture of it next to a penis, the similarities are striking. Striking. And there are illustrations in my book to show readers this. And I think it's, again, when you see how strikingly similar it is, you think, gosh, like why do we not also have all kinds of medications to help us with sexual function? And, you know, it's, again, points to the sexism, the historically sexist nature of you know, health and how much more we need to study and go in order to really make some progress here.
Yeah, and for my dark roast Betties, these are my community members who just like want all the details. Like you go, one of the beautiful things about the book is there's a lot of pictures,
Yeah.
lots and lots of pictures. Because I remember my sex ed was like, here's a banana, everybody, and here's a condom, and here's how the condom goes on the banana, and like that was, and then like women bleed, it's like, and women, here's the menstrual cycle. It was a chart, and like women, and so even just bleeding, even I remember having to hide, like if I had to go into my locker to get like a pad or something, I would like hide it in my pocket or I'd put it in my bag. Like no one could know that I was on my period. Like that was like the most mortifying thing.
Totally.
And I think that, yeah, I mean, I feel like it's so important to have these conversations. So with the clitoris in particular, what's incredible about it is that it has a shaft. So in the same way that we think about, the shaft of a penis, there is a shaft for the clitoris as well. And it has anchors, and it anchors you. It's this beautiful structure that I think has just been overlooked because, as you were saying, sexism, no interest in actually figuring out what is pleasurable for a woman, what the function is of the clitoris, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. There is actually a chart in my book where multiple structures are actually, there's no differentiation in fetuses until a certain point. And so a lot of our sexual organs, there was no differentiation when we were first conceived. And so a lot of them, they change, obviously, but they have the same starting point, So when you think about it that way, it's not so surprising that, the clitoris would be like the male penis, but we just aren't taught this. To your point, that's not in health class, and that's fascinating information and useful to know, right?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. All right. Well, that's what the point of podcasts like this are, because we want to be talking about the fact that we have a even though it's an internal structure, right? So we can't see the clitoral shaft, let's say, but it is there. Yes. And what that might feel like with arousal, and how, and what pleasure is for a woman. Because I think that, there's always the joke, right? Like there's always jokes about like, oh, if you can't find the button, then there's so many, like there's such a plethora of nerve endings and structure there, that there can be a lot of creative ways that we can help our women feel, or at least understand how their bodies work.
Yes, 100%. And when we know how our bodies work, and and we have doctors who we see, who we can trust, who can walk us through some of these things. I'm remembering right now, I interviewed a sexual medicine specialist who said, when I really describe the structure to my patients and I talk about how much stimulation is actually needed in order to have orgasm, a lot of my patients realize, I don't actually need a pill, or I don't actually need all these things I was going to ask you about. I think I might just need a little more stimulation. And so I think that's really interesting as well. Again, it points to the more information we have, the more we can understand how our bodies work so that we can get solutions for our problems.
I don't know if you'll be able to talk to this, but I'll just throw this out there as an idea, and then maybe you have some thoughts on it as well. I think that what I hear a lot from my community as well, just building on what you just said, is that there's a lot of, how will I frame this? I'll say shame around how long it might take a woman to climax an orgasm relative to, if she has assuming she has a male partner or she's with a man, relative to the man, right? So a male will, let's say, climax in a slightly different way, or the time to climax is shorter. And I think that there's this, I'm behind. we got to rush. We got to get there. And again, Kelly, who's Dr. Casperson, who's colleague, friend of mine, she's like, why would you want to rush this? Would you rush like having the best time of your life? Like, would you rush, getting married? Would you rush, think about like a dream trip that you've been planning? Like, you would never rush things that give you pleasure. So why is it that women translate that into the bedroom, like, oh, I have to come as fast as my partner is because, he came in like whatever amount of time, so I have to do that too. Or we have to orgasm together. That's another one that I hear, that we have to climax together, and that's like that's the indication somehow of like an amazing session that we've had together.
Yeah, I think when I worked on the sexual health chapter of this book, I interviewed a lot of experts in that area. And what's coming to mind right now, something that also really, it wasn't a surprise because I knew the research was there, but it really was eye-opening to me. And it's something I remember. I think for a lot of women, especially in midlife, it's really important to understand the difference between spontaneous desire and responsive desire. And I think that, the expectation bit, right, where it's like, well, I should be able to come as fast as my male partner, or I should be as horny as he is, and it's like the shoulds we put on ourselves around this, when you understand spontaneous desire is when you have that, lusty, I have to have you feeling. But responsive desire is just as great. And I interviewed Dr. Emily Nagoski, who is just a fantastic researcher in this area. And what she said is she often thinks, and this comes from a sex therapist that she had interviewed for one of her books, she thinks of responsive desire as like going to a party on a Friday night. You might not be super excited to go, but if your friends are going to be there, you put the dress on, you hire the babysitters, you get in the car. Once you get there, you're probably going to have fun, right? And so if we can start to think of it like
You're
that.
Like, why don't I do this more often?
Oh my gosh, I'm dancing. I'm having so much fun. And so I think maybe, yeah, it's like you finally get there and it's like, all right, let me relax. Let me kick back. Let me enjoy this party that I'm now at and drop all of these expectations about what it should look like and just lean into what it looks like for you.
Yeah. So good. So good. I love that. Okay, let's pivot a little bit because we could talk about sex all day long. I do want to talk about women's health risks as it pertains to, you mentioned heart and brain. I would love for you to talk about heart disease as the number one health risk. I know we've talked about this, maybe not ad nauseum yet, but we've talked about it enough on the show. Women are so scared of breast cancer. Yep. So scared. It comes like that bikini medicine that we were talking about before. Yep. It's like we are worried about, our boobs and our butts, Yeah. So talk to us about heart disease and why women should be focused on preventative measures around CVD, around cardiovascular disease, as much as, if not more than, breast cancer risk.
Yeah, one of the biggest surprises to me when I tucked into the reporting of this book was interviewing a preventive cardiologist who said, not only do not enough women know that heart disease is their number one risk of death, but awareness of that fact has actually gone down in recent years. So we really, we are moving backwards, unfortunately.
Why do you think that is? Sorry to interrupt you, but why do you think that our awareness is going down?
I wonder if we aren't talking about it enough. I don't see articles all the time about that. Whereas in a beautiful way, I do see a ton in my social media feeds, online about menopause. And that's great, right? Look at what it's doing for awareness. Look at how many women we are turning on to very real solutions and really great research and what we need to know about it. I don't think we're doing the same. And I'll speak as a journalist here. I think I, as a journalist, and my peers are not talking enough about heart disease in women in a way that's sticking. And so I think we have some work to do there.
Yeah.
But the other big eye-opener for me in terms of heart health is I think not enough women know that actually our gynecologic history impacts our risk of heart disease later on. So pregnancy complications is huge. A lot of women think, I had pregnancy complications, a complication, and then it went away after I gave birth, so I don't have to think about this. Whereas actually, that part of your health history should be brought up with every doctor you see and can really influence how your doctors in the future take care of your heart and do preventive
Are
things.
we talking about GD here, like gestational diabetes? Is that what you're referring to?
Preeclampsia.
Okay.
Any kind of pregnancy complication you should talk to a doctor about, that you had this complication, it went away after you gave birth. And that's because, many people think of pregnancy as the heart's first stress test. It is really hard work to be pregnant. And if you had a complication that could indicate that something went a little awry in your system, it's not like it's a, sentence to something terrible happening with your heart. It's just knowing this can help you bring it up with your doctors.
It's a risk. Just knowing it's a risk factor, right? It's
and then
did your mom have breast cancer? If so, that puts you at a higher, it's not guaranteed, but it puts you at a higher risk of breast cancer yourself. It's the same kind of...
Bingo.
Yeah, thinking. Yeah. Okay.
Bingo. And if we know this, then we can bring it up. But I think unfortunately not enough women know this as a risk factor. We are, as you said, focused on breast cancer, and we're terrified of colon cancer now, which is happening in younger and younger people. And, all these other cancers, which we should be concerned about. We should be getting our screenings for those cancers, but we have to think about our heart health as well.
Yeah. And I would probably throw into the hat there, like, night sweats, hot flashes,
Yes.
right? So this is also, I would say, as a risk. And coming back to the clitoris, because I can always do that, I would also say changes in your ability to climax, right? Like the clitoral artery is, when we look at men, ED, like erectile dysfunction, is one of the early signs of cardiovascular. It's an early warning. It's like in the canary in the coal mine. Yeah. I would say that the clitoral artery, or your inability to climax as easily as you once did, I would also be discussing that, of course, with a doctor that you know, like, and trust. But that is also something for you to be thinking about too.
Absolutely. And again, points to this, the importance of being with a doctor, feeling like you are in care with a doctor, in communication with a healthcare provider who you can talk to about these things, right? They've heard everything. What every doctor I interviewed for my book said to me is like, you can't say anything that's going to make us blush, or that's going to shock us.
They don't care that your toenails aren't done.
No, they don't.
They don't care that your legs are not shaved.
No,
they just want to go in and see what's going on. Yeah,
yeah, totally. And they've seen it all. And so talk about these things, even if you feel a little ashamed, and maybe especially if you feel a little ashamed, right? Because this way they won't fly under the radar.
Yeah, I remember talking to a bunch of women a while ago, and the question I posed was, how many of you have used a hand mirror just to look at your vulva, like just to look at how the external genitalia? It was like one person in the room, and maybe there was, I don't know, there's like maybe 50 women that we were having a discussion with.
Yeah.
I broke my heart. I'm like, y'all need to get a hand mirror. Like, all your makeup comes with like a little mirror.
Perfect
for your
size.
eyeshadow and your blush. Just go in the bathroom and have a look. What does she look like?
Totally.
Yeah. Okay, so I always bring it back to I probably should have been an OB-GYN in another life, but okay, so let's talk about autoimmune disorders, another disease category that I would say unilaterally affects women. I see, especially in midlife, this is often when we often get the diagnosis of Hashimoto's thyroiditis, multiple sclerosis, rheumatoid arthritis, and on and on and on. What is happening either at that sort of menopausal trend, like that perimenopausal, menopausal transition? And what is it, do we know, or do we have an inkling of understanding around why women are so disproportionately affected with autoimmune disease?
Yeah. I mean, this is a big area where we have some ideas, but again, every expert I spoke to said we need more research. We should have more answers. We really have failed women in the fact that we don't have more specifics right now, which is really unfortunate. What I know, and I feel like Dr. Stephanie, you could speak to this as well, is, in more detail, but what I know about it is hormones play a huge role. And that menopause hormone transition where, you're declining estrogen, it impacts so many systems of the body. And the more, again, we know about the potentials, diseases that this changing hormone state can cause, the more we can stay alert to symptoms. But my understanding is that dip in estrogen really can mess with the immune system in a way that can make some of these autoimmune diseases become more prevalent or surface.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a perfect I think there's massive research gaps. I don't think we have the answer to it. I agree completely with the estrogen drop. I also think that there's something with central tolerance in the immune system and rising and cortisol. So cortisol is one of the ways that we keep our immune system in check. It rises in the morning, kind of we have this CAR response, which is cortisol awareness, or I should say awakening response. It's like high in the morning, and then it should kind of peter off as the day goes on. And I think as our midlife is for a lot of women, it's busy, it's full, it's stressful. It's sort of becoming the time now where we start seeing our parents' health failing, which is incredibly stressful, incredibly traumatic. And then we're raising teenagers or children at whatever age, because a lot of women in perimenopause are having children later in life. So and then your career, you're usually at the peak of your career. Like there's so much in this time. And I think that affects we're so exquisitely sensitive to stress. And so when our sympathetic drive is when we're always in that drive, like that sympathetic state, I think that can start to affect central tolerance, which is this concept that we talk about in the immune system, where cortisol is basically every morning is just looking at all the cells yep, you're good to go, you're good to go, you're good to go. And so when stress is too high or too low, that central tolerance starts to get a bit messed up. So cells that are autoimmune, attacking, self-attacking or self-eating, I guess, get through. They kind of pass through the gate that they shouldn't be able to get through. So I think that there's something there as well. But again, research, we still need to do so much more work.
Totally. You're reminding me another theory that comes up often when you interview experts in the immune system is differences in the female immune system, which we know, right, because of pregnancy, right? Our immune system has to be different because it can't attack the fetus, right, which has pieces of DNA that are totally foreign, right, from the sperm. And so I feel like that has to play a role as well, right? And we, again, I think we've got people working for specific answers for us until we have all of that research to really guide us. We have to stay aware of our symptoms. We have to know that in midlife, these things can happen. Stress can ratchet up, and then stay really clued into symptoms so that we're talking to our doctors about what's happening so that we try to get a diagnosis on the earlier side. Because that's the other thing is that, especially autoimmune diseases, multiple other conditions, it takes women so long to get a diagnosis. It takes us a long time to be believed in some ways. We get a lot of doctors saying, I don't know what's wrong with you. And then we don't get answers. And that's not good.
I think the other big theme here, maybe one of the big themes from your book, is that women will accept a staggering amount of suffering. So that could be in the form of autoimmune disease. It could be in the form of heart disease. It could be in the form of having menstrual pain. This is such a big thing, and there's big differences even in how some physicians will treat Black women versus white women. How we will assume that a Black woman should be able to have a higher tolerance, let's say, for pain. And we see this in the maternal wards. And I just watched an upsetting video the other day about a woman she's a Black woman. She was just begging for a bed, and she ended up giving birth 12 minutes later. But in triage, the doctor or whoever was doing her, getting her settled into the hospital, just was not addressing her pain at all. So I would love to actually talk about hormones specifically, and of course in perimenopause, right? So the women who are going through perimenopause now, like myself, I'm 47, so I'm very clearly in perimenopause. Maybe you can walk us through what is normal versus what's common, right? So when something is normal and when something is maybe being dismissed from your doctor, and maybe you might even want to talk about your own story about this here, because I think it lends a little bit of credibility to what we're talking about here. Talk to us about how women often will internalize. So if someone tells them actually, this is just part of aging, suck it up, buttercup. And when something is normal versus when it's common, and we need to have more further investigation from there.
Yeah, I think that we blame our hormones for a lot. And while our hormone fluctuations can explain certain symptoms that we have, I think we have to stop blaming ourselves, and certainly other people need to stop saying, oh, it's probably because you're so hormonal right now, right? It's our hormones are amazing.
Our hormones are helping us. They're actually good little soldiers.
They're great little soldiers, and they're amazing. And we have to stop apologizing for them. Yeah, I ignored my own symptoms for years with the suck it up buttercup approach, heavy periods, gosh, that's just one of the downsides of being female. That monthly quote unquote hemorrhaging, I used to call it, that led me to be anemic and low energy all the time. I just have to suffer through until I hit, menopause and no more periods. And what I learned.
What did hemorrhaging, I'm going to interrupt you. What did hemorrhaging look like for you? What is it when you were like, oh, it's just my monthly hemorrhage? What was that?
I was putting on when I had my period, day 1, day 2, sometimes day 3, I was using an overnight size pad about every hour.
Wow. Okay.
I took a flight once with my sister, and I just looked at her with wide eyes like, I have to run off this plane. I had to change. And that was after just an hour before I had worn a tampon and an overnight pad, and I had still leaked through. So this is heavy bleeding. And frankly, I should have known better. I should have been like, this is unacceptable. This is too heavy. And I just thought, I guess this is normal for me, And finally, I talked about these symptoms with a doctor who said, let's do a little investigating here. Turns out I had a uterus full of fibroids. Luckily, fibroids are benign, but you still get this sense that your body has betrayed you, that I've got all these growths making my wombs super lumpy and inflamed and causing me all these problems. And still, I thought, I'll deal with it. Fibroids tend to shrink once you get to menopause because oftentimes they're fed by hormones like estrogen. And so I just thought, I'll deal with it. And so symptoms got worse and worse. And, I finally made the choice for me to have a hysterectomy. Turned out to be the best medical decision I've ever made for myself. It's about a year since I had that surgery, and I feel like a new person. Again, that was the right call for me. It's not for everybody, and there are other treatments for fibroids. But I do think it points to, even, again, as a health journalist for 20 some odd years at that stage, I was ignoring these really intense symptoms. And I think it was really eye-opening to me, like, wow, if I'm ignoring, like, I know other women are doing this left and right, putting others first, just dealing with what we're facing. And that's a new rule of women's health. It's time to stop that. We matter. Our symptoms are important. It's crucial to talk to a doctor who listens and does the appropriate testing and tries to help get you the answer you need.
When you're talking your own journey, I think that your own story here is fascinating, because I think that even someone who is entrenched in health and is looking at health topics all the time, I think that and you said it, I don't even know if you realized you said it. You're like, I just thought that there was just it's just who I am, something wrong with me. It's like, this is just normal for me.
No bigs.
And I should have known better. Like you use that little phrase, like, I should have known better. And I think that there is I'm happy that you said that, because I think that really is demonstrative of how much we internalize, whether we are successful or not, in terms of like, I should have known better. Like, I should have, woulda, coulda, there we are again, like shooting all over ourselves. Like, I should have known better. It's like, how, if your sex education was a banana, like, how were you, and you were never taught about fibroids, you were never taught about endometriosis, which is kind of what you're, I'm not your doctor, I'm not, I haven't looked at your labs, but that excess estrogen and that fibroid growth is very, very common in endometriosis, right? So when you talk about that, what are some of the ways that you've changed maybe that internal self-talk? Because I think that there's so many women that are listening that are like, yeah, totally. Like, I totally should have known better. Like, this was my story. I should have known better. It's like, how could you have ever known better if nobody ever if you didn't listen to podcasts like this, or you didn't read books like yours? Like, how would we ever know better? Like, did you find that in the process of writing this book that there was maybe a shift in the way that you relate to your body? Because I think a lot of women relate to their bodies as like these foes, like this enemy that needs to be conquered.
Yes. And poetically, my hysterectomy happened right after I turned in the draft of this book. And I think working on this book, I spent 3 years reporting and writing and rewriting and fact-checking. And really, what it comes down to is I do relate to my body totally differently now because I have more knowledge about it. I gave a chapter to a friend who said, I had no idea that the menstrual cycle worked this way, even though I cycle about every 28 days. And now I'm going to talk to my doctor because I realize what I've been feeling may not be quote unquote normal. It's hard to talk about normal because things are so varied for so many of us. Again, it points to really establishing with a doctor who you trust and respect and who you can figure out with what's normal for you. But yeah, I relate so differently in the way that I take care of myself, in the way that I listen to symptoms I have. That's not to say it's like, oh gosh, I'm worried all the time. It's more like with this newfound knowledge, I can talk about my symptoms from a place of empowerment and confidence, which I think is really important. I also think that I've stopped apologizing for my body. I think in some ways when we should on ourselves, like, oh, this should just be, whatever it is. I think we weave in what women too often do, which is, oh, I'm so sorry I didn't shave my legs when we go to the gynecologist. Or
Right. They don't care. Yeah.
they don't care. And if anything, especially if they're a woman, they feel bad because they're like, gosh, I interviewed Dr. Elizabeth Coleman, a breast oncologist, who says, I can't tell you how many times I sit at the bedside of a woman with breast cancer and she's apologizing for not putting deodorant on. I mean, think about that for a moment. And I just feel like when we understand our bodies, we just come from this newfound place of, no, I'm not going to apologize for my body. I'm not going to apologize for my physiology or my biology.
Or for being human. Like you're apologizing for growing hair on your legs. Like that's what happens to the human. Like it's just society that's told women that you shouldn't have hair there. So that's why we shave it, right? So it's like that's what the female human and male do. It grows hair to protect the skin to keep you warm.
Totally. Yeah. It's pretty mind-blowing how, even hearing you reflect back to me, like, wow, what you said and how you just brushed it off. It's sad, actually. And I think we have to give ourselves space to feel sad about like how we've related to our own health for many years. And then after the sadness passes, it's like, okay, how am I going to change that now?
Yeah. Yeah. I think this is maybe a side tangent discussion for another time, but I think for like health for so many women for so long has been about like, how skinny can I be? Like that's their health. It's like, I'm going to do Pilates and I'm going to do this and that, but to see how like that's what health meant to them. Yeah. And I think that there's this much more robust, colorful, wholesome circle of things that maybe we can start to get into. And this book certainly does that as well. So talk to me a little bit about how you would love, if someone picks up your book, how you would want this book to help women speak to their doctors. So if you have someone endometriosis, PCOS, or you just like your labs are normal, but you feel like garbage, what are some ways that we might think about communicating with our doctors who are also human and they're doing the best that they can with the resources and capacity that they have? How can we do this? And how might we also expand this to, I always say that this podcast is for women and the men who love them. It's like, and how can we help our beautiful men who are often sometimes forgotten, another topic for another time. How can we also help them understand what is happening to us mechanistically, physiologically, emotionally, etc. So talk to us first about the doctor, and then maybe husbands, sons, daughters. Go.
I love this question. So my book, The New Rules of Women's Health, is a big book. It is a thick book. It is 700 pages. So my hope is that you'll have this book on your bookshelf, your coffee table, and then when something is up for you, you can use it as a reference. So prime example, myself again, actually I did find out when I had the hysterectomy that I had a diagnosis of adenomyosis. And if that happens to a woman, it's like, I've never actually heard of that. We don't talk about that a lot. And so I flipped to that section of my book and I was like, oh, okay, at least I have a little bit of background now. So that when I have my post-op appointment, I can say, I saw on my chart that I have adenomyosis. What does this mean? Let's talk about this for me. And so, frankly, when you can reference a book like mine to be able to have a baseline knowledge, I think you start to have different appointments with your doctors. So along the course of reporting this book, I had an appointment with a new primary care physician. And at the end of our appointment, I felt like her eyes were sparkling. And I was like, well, what's happening? And she was like, this was a fun appointment. You came with so much baseline knowledge that we were able to cover a lot of ground. We were able to talk about things that I don't get to talk to all my patients about when it comes to being proactive about health. And so I think what's just amazing about that is like, you come to these appointments feeling super empowered and you walk away feeling more satisfied, after an interaction with your doctor, which I think is huge. when it comes to the men in our life, our sons, our brothers, our husbands, even our fathers, so I've given my book to my husband. And again, it's a big book. So it's not like I'm saying read this whole thing. But every time I get a mammogram, I usually have to do a follow-up sonogram. I have very dense breast tissue. And that is part of my breast health journey is follow-up sonos. Ever since my husband has read the breast health chapter, he's able to support me in better ways when I have the inevitable freak out when my mammogram report comes back or when I'm talking to him about potential follow-up testing. And so the more our men in our, the men in our lives who love us so much know and also have that baseline understanding of our health, women's health, the more they can support us. And I think that's a beautiful thing.
And 700 pages commissioned, I should say, or maybe not, originally commissioned with Maria Shriver. I would love for you to tell that story as well, because I love Maria Shriver. She's such a great human.
She's an amazing human. And yes, I had the privilege of being commissioned to write this book by Maria Shriver. I wrote it for her imprint at Penguin Random House called The Open Field. And Maria and I were having a salad in LA. And the way that happened is I interviewed her for a story for Prevention magazine on women and brain health. I learned that she founded the Women's Alzheimer's Movement, now part of the Cleveland Clinic. And I learned a little bit about the journey of how that came to be. And when the piece came out, she called me. And my heart sank. I thought fact-checking had missed something and I got something wrong in the article. And she said, I loved the piece. Will you come work for me at my Sunday paper? She runs a newsletter that goes out every week. And so about a year into working for her, we were having a salad and she said, I'd like you to write this book because we don't have a comprehensive women's health book. We've got amazing women's health titles, but something really comprehensive that looks at not only the bikini medicine aspects of women's health, but also our brains, our digestive tract, our everything. And so that's how this book came to be. And Maria wrote the foreword, and it really was a labor of love for many years. But yeah, and now it's out in the world.
Fantastic. I mean, it's like you had me at salad, Maria.
Totally.
You just had to blink in my direction and I would have done it for you.
When Maria Shriver asks you to write a women's health manifesto, you're mid-salad, but you say, okay, Maria Shriver.
You say, yes.
I'm on it.
There's no other answer but yes.
There's no other answer.
All right. The other thing that I would love to actually cover with you, I think sometimes we talk about perimenopause and menopause, and I got to tell you, I am kind of tired of it personally, is this idea that menopause is this like, ho-hum, we're not fertile anymore, and now we're just past our prime, and now we have to medicate, and now we're just like a problem to be solved. It's like it's like the Sound of Music. How do you solve a problem like menopause? It's like, or Maria, for the original line there. But tell us about some of the upsides. Like, what are some of the things we have to look forward to? I can't tell you. I speak to so many women, colleagues, friends who have made the transition and they're like, I'm having the best sex of my life. I feel so good in my body. I finally feel comfortable in my skin. So those are just some of the things that I'm hearing. I would love maybe for you to outline with people that you have spoken to, maybe your own experience. What are some of the things that we have to look forward to with menopause?
I interviewed a gynecologist and menopause specialist, Dr. Heather Bartos, who I think put it so beautifully, which she said, the thing about perimenopause is that you're on a whitewater rapid ride and you're going through the rapids. And man, you hit some rapids and it can be fun. It can be scary. It can be all the things, right? And then you get to menopause and it's like you're at the bottom of that river or whatever you've just whitewater rapided your way down, and it's peaceful and it's calm and it's you feel proud of yourself. And I think that's the thing, the way that I'm going into the menopause transition. Like, sure, there may be some bumps along the way. Mindset can really help in terms of like, okay, as long as I'm getting treatment for the very real symptoms that can have very real impacts on my future health, the more I can sort of say, well, what are the upsides? And I think for me, some of that is, aside from, the whole, like, don't have to worry about birth control, don't have periods, which again, the hysterectomy took care of. It's also like, wow, like I just noticed myself coming into my own. I feel embodied in a new way. I feel more myself. I feel like I'm entering Meghan 2.0. And I think that is something I know a lot of my friends are feeling as well. Like the phrase, we're just sort of giving fewer F's about things and just really getting laser focused on what makes our own lives meaningful, who we want in our lives. And I think, the thing for me with as it relates to my physical health is I'm really taking the opportunity of menopause to double down on not only the healthy lifestyle habits we know work, but frankly to line up my preventive appointments to really make sure that I'm taking care of my health. Because as you pointed out before, in midlife, man, we get pulled in all different directions, right? Kids, family obligations, aging parents who need us in a new way. And again, as one doctor I interviewed said, usually the dog gets more vet appointments than we get healthcare appointments in midlife. And the problem with that is that in midlife, we have this beautiful opportunity to actually make changes that will help us prevent heart disease later on or osteoporosis later on. And so I'm prioritizing myself in a new way, and that feels really good.
I love it. And you know what I love the most? I mean, there's a lot of things I love about this book, but I love that it's a coffee table book because it's so damn big. You got to keep it on the coffee table. And I don't think that I've ever seen another women's health book that can function as a coffee table book. So that I think is really great. And that really literally brings the conversation right into the living room where it belongs. Totally. Not in the bedroom, not in the office crying or in the bathroom crying, like right in the heart of the home. So I just love that so much.
Oh, I love that too. And bring in the boys and the men and show them the illustration of the clitoris, right? Like we all should have this information and this knowledge to live our best lives.
Fantastic. Where can people find you? Where can people find the book? Give them all the places. We'll make sure these are all clickable links in the show notes. But if anybody wants to jump on it right now, where can people find you?
Yeah, hop on to newrulesofwomenshealth.com. That's where you can order the book and learn a little bit more about me. MeghanRabbitt.com. At this point, it pushes you right to the book page. But yeah, I absolutely loved chatting with you today. So thank you so much.
Me too. Thank you so much for your time today. It's been a pleasure. Hello. Welcome to the after party where I give you my synopsis, my true thoughts and feelings now that the guest has hung up. And probably no surprise here. I really enjoyed this conversation. I thought that she did such a good job of covering so much information in a short amount of time. Like this is maybe on the shorter side of some of our podcast episodes. As you know, we like to go deep roast whenever we can. But she did a really good job of getting through a lot of stuff in an efficient way. So really just, hat tip to you, Meghan, for your just being a great podcast guest and answering things very clearly and very concisely. Some of the things I really loved right at the beginning of our conversation, we were talking about what's wrong in women's health, and this conversation around language really matters, right? So we talked obviously the fallopian tube versus the uterine tubes. I think that the uterine tubes is much more neutral and it actually describes, you don't have to remember what it is. I brought up the example of Kegels, et cetera. So I think that terminology and language is very, very important in women's health, particularly because I'm not super in love with the idea of some rando person who's like, oh, I'm just going to name these after myself. My name is Fallopia. We're going to call these the fallopian tubes. Like, no, thanks. I love Italians, but you're not going to name my uterine tubes after yourself. Thank you very much. So loved that. And then, of course, guys, come on. I loved the clitoris conversation. I kind of half joked with her that I feel like I can bring, and I think I actually said this, like I can bring any topic back to sex. So I really did. I do. And I think it's important because what a disservice to women, so much so that for years we were modeling the female clitoris after the nerve endings that are in a cow, so we often say, like, you hear Stacey Sims, who's been on the show many times, love her, she's like, women are not small men, and it's like, yes, and women are also not small cows, so it's like we have there's different innervation, there's like some subtle differences between human females and female cows. So really, really loved that. I think that as well, on a more serious note, I think that the conversation around internalizing what's normal for you. So when Meghan was talking about, oh, it's just my monthly hemorrhage, and she couldn't get on a plane because she had a tampon and an overnight pad, and she still bled through all of that, and she had to get off the plane because she'd soaked through her pants or whatever. I mean, for me, I also relate to that because that was me for many years. I definitely, like when I was in physical practice, I definitely brought a different pair of pants. I brought 3 or 4 pads, tampons, and I was like layering it up like mad. And I remember always having to get up out of the desk. Like if I was doing like a report of findings with someone or an initial assessment, I would always, if I was on my bleed week, I would always turn the chair away just in case I had already bled through and I didn't want the patient in the room to see that. So I totally related to that. And that was just like, oh, that's like my curse. Like that's just what I have to deal with. So I really, really appreciated her honesty around how she would speak to herself and how she just normalized what was very clearly an abnormal condition. And she later revealed in the show, if you're listening to this, you've listened to the whole thing, where she talked about having a diagnosis of adenomyosis, right? So, which is almost like a cousin to endo. So there was that. And then I think that the other big idea here is that this is a mother of a book. You know what I'm saying? Like this is a 700-page book. And there's something that I love, like I froth at the mouth at, and I'm salivating a little bit. Maybe you can hear it in my voice as I'm saying it, about having a book like this in the living room. Like what a friggin' concept to have women's health front and center in the heart of your home, like where you sit on the couch to scroll Netflix, where you watch movies together as a family. Maybe it's right off of the kitchen where you can say, oh, honey, I just went for my mammogram and let's kind of look up again. Like let's reference what it is to have dense breasts. Like how amazing is that? Like that maybe is we talked about a lot of great things, but just that philosophical shift to bring women's health like right into the heart of the home where everybody sees it 100 times a day. I love that. Those are my thoughts. I really enjoyed this conversation. I thought it was short and sweet, but also chock full of good stuff. This is kind of like the primer to all the deep, like if you're a dark roast Betty and you're like, I want all the details. Good. I have that for you. If you're a light roast Betty, this is a really good episode. Like this is a really good introduction to pretty much what the entire podcast is about, because we covered such a vast amount of material in here. So I really hope that you will, if you found this episode really striking, if it spoke to your heart in any way, that you'll consider sharing it. The more Bettys I can accumulate in the Betty army, the better we are. Your light roast, your medium roast, your dark roast, it doesn't matter. We want all the Bettys listening to the podcast, sharing the podcast, talking about the podcast. That's the most important thing. So with that, I bid you adieu, and I will see you next time.